Matter, Me Too, or everything. We've been talking about this for some time, and frankly, it's been overwhelming. Understanding and addressing how we create the most inclusive school is a huge topic. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is in every part of school life: curriculum, co-curriculum, pastoral, facilities, staff recruitment, community links, the list goes on. And one thing we learned is that this cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach. We realised we needed to know the right questions to ask and to understand how we could focus on the most important things to everyone to make a difference in our community, but we didn't know where to start. Fortunately, help is at hand. Last year, we were lucky enough to hear about Inclusion Labs, and some of us got to meet its founder, Temi Barker. Temi's background is in legal executive search, and she was helping multinational clients to achieve their strategic goals. She's now combined her career in strategy and research with her own experience as a mum of two girls to create Inclusion Labs, and she offers a custom equity, diversity and inclusion programme for schools just like us. It's grounded in research and best practice, but also in the lived experience of students, families and staff, and particularly those from underrepresented groups. We're privileged to have Temi here today. As you can imagine, she's very much in demand at this end of the term, so I'm going to hand you over now and she can tell you all about it.
Thank you for having me. I am at the tail end of my INSET, which consists of sewing hundreds of labels onto uniforms, wrestling with parents in John Lewis school shoe section. But I'm really thrilled to be here and I'm excited to speak to you all. As Sarah said, I am an alumna of this sector. I went to several independent schools. My children are in this sector, so I know this sector very well. I love this sector. And I'm proud of this sector, and I just want us to do the best that we can for every child. As she also said, my background is more in the corporate world, so I was doing strategy and research at first for legal recruitment firms, and then in the tail end of what was some years out to raise and have my children, I started doing it in the startup world. And Inclusion Labs came about because of some personal experiences I had with my eldest daughter at her school. Where I really felt that in a lot of cases, schools have these processes in place. They're just not quite shining in front of every child. And not because they don't want to, but because they're not really understanding that. And using my background, particularly in the startup world, it really frustrated me because I thought, schools like yours are trying their best, but this isn't your only role and responsibility. And actually, people like myself, with the skill sets and expertise that we have, can help your schools. We don't need to put all of these skills into another tech company that predicts what you want for dinner, or how to get home with another cab. Actually, you can support these schools. This is the future of our systems, of our policies, of our laws. We should all, dig in and help each other through this. And so really that was Inclusion Labs. For me, it started with months and months and months of focus groups. I had focus groups with students, I had focus groups with parents, and I have focus groups with educators, such as yourself. Particularly those from underrepresented groups, but not exclusively. There'll be no surprise to know and hear that the most vocal of those groups were the students. They were really adamant about wanting this change, about what they felt it should look like. But also it was very interesting because for me, I felt that a lot of the options when it comes to helping schools really start from the school perspective. And actually, where you need to start is from the people that are experiencing these barriers, that are experiencing these discriminatory actions or whatever else. And so with those focus groups, we really built a picture of what it feels like to be in schools like yours at this point. Not when I was at school, 20+ years ago, but right now, what is a child in St. Peter's going through, whether they are gay, whether they are black, whether they have a non-physical disability, and using that to build solutions. So again, taking that mindset, that strategic and research-led mindset, and building a roadmap for schools like yours. So that I've been told not to turn around, but I'm going to try. That very funky-looking logo was actually the end result of our months of focus groups. We asked some of the most vocal students that were part of our sessions to pick a letter out of Inclusion Labs. We gave them access to Google fonts, And we told them, pick a letter that you think, or a font that you think represents you based on the description. So if it's a bit uptight, or if it's a little bit out there or quirky, or just one that you like, or one that you think represents your experience, whatever that is. And so all of those young people, students, such as those in your care, picked their fonts and created this slightly wonky, very definitely imperfect logo, which I think sums up what we're trying to do here in your schools. So, Inclusion Labs. We are an organisation who work to embed diversity, equity and inclusion into the cultural, personal and educational development of every young person. It is a very zhuzhed up way of saying we just want every child to be able to thrive. It's not just about curriculum, it's also about what it feels like to be within your school, the ethos, the atmosphere, the values. So again, it's more than just the educational development. And what we're trying to do with schools such as yours is build that foundation. We take inclusion in the round, so we don't focus on any one aspect or any one protected characteristics. And so by virtue of that, we don't claim to be experts in race or in disability. What we're experts in is building that foundation so that when you dive in deeper as a school, it can stand firm. We all know the analogy of how best to build a house. It's the same here, and we think that's the approach that we need to introduce to your schools. One more thing we want to encourage you all to do is move away from templates, move away from copy and paste mindset, move away from the reliance to unconscious bias training. Important, but it's not the only answer. Our key objective of our work is to help you interrogate your school's processes, your school's practices, and your school's policies. Again, a zhuzhed-up way of saying your school system. We have developed a 360-degree system-wide approach, which essentially means that every member of your school community is included in making your school inclusive. That's really important. It's not just head of HR, wherever you are, head of PSHE, to turn this school into an inclusive community. Every one of you have a role to play, regardless of whether, I'm sorry, you're a white male maths teacher. We had one in our focus group and he said to us, I understand the need to do this work, but I don't understand what it's got to do with me. I'm a white male maths teacher. I just want to come in and teach maths. And so our job is to work with you to get you to understand what role you play, regardless of what role you have. We are advocates of systems thinking, and that is how we designed our roadmap. And it's really a way of helping you to view your systems from a broad perspective, which means looking at it from its overall structures, its overall patterns, its overall cycles, as opposed to just seeing specific events. So as opposed to being reactionary to everyone's invited or Black Lives Matter. It's taking that holistic approach of your school. Normally when you go through this work, or when schools and organisations go through this work, they really have three approaches. There is the individual, which is aimed at changing people's minds. So that's levels of bias, values. Again, unconscious bias training sits firmly within that. Then there's the cultural, and that's aimed at changing the social norms, what's appropriate and what's not. And then finally, there's the institutional, which is where we planted our flag. And that's aimed at changing every institutional, your institution's systems, your processes, policies, practices. You must align all three. But you have to remember that the reason you have to align all three is that all of them can affect all of them. Simultaneously, interactively. Your systems, your structures, they can influence people's thoughts, and thoughts also lead to the creation of certain structures and patterns. But we believe that institutional is a good way to start. Through this, you can influence the other two. You can curb the culture, and you can incentivize individuals to change. Why now? Well, we have all been simultaneously in a reset mode. The heartbreak of 2020 motivated and challenged the world to push for change, to pay attention, to take notice. If 2020 was a wake-up call, then 2021 was the year, or is the year, to act. This is one of the greatest opportunities we have to transform our systems, yes, including the education system, and to transform it collectively. To collectively pay attention to what's been happening. There's no excuse to ignore this. And as you already know, we can't ignore it. We need to be better today. We need to teach our children to be better than what we're witnessing in the world. We can't go back to normal, and we need to activate real, long-lasting change. And this starts with each of us. It starts at home, it starts in our schools, in every environment. Well, the reality is, school's the best place. And one of my favourite quotes is, if we change even a tiny viewpoint of the pupils in our care, we can change a generation of thought. In the roles that you're already occupying, that is a key part of what you're doing. In whatever way you're teaching or supporting your students is to prepare them for a world and a life that exists beyond these gates. And it's the same thing when we're doing DEI work. It's about changing even the tiniest viewpoint of our pupils in our care. So doing this work, it's about the future, absolutely, but it's also about the present, and it's also about the past. So, again, these aren't just educational issues. These aren't just school issues. These are societal issues. These are local, national, and global issues. We've seen this, we've heard this in every industry across the world. People are grappling with the same things that you're going to be grappling with within your own context. So it's not just all on you. And the work you do in your school, or the work we do in our schools, needs to speak to the work being done across the world, in every sector, in every organisation, private and public. Your schools shouldn't approach this work in silence, but connect the dots to society, to national and global agendas. And part of our work as Inclusion Labs is to embed much of these agendas as benchmarks and standards that are relevant in a school setting. So to date, we've embedded over 40 research and best practice and global agendas, everything from the UN Sustainable Development Goals to the Equality Act, the Race Equality Charter, no surprises for what that approach is for, the theme of SWAN, which is about gender equality, through to equality duty, Ofsted, ISI. Again, bringing all of these into our roadmap so that we're doing a lot of the work for you. It's not that you can't do this work on your own, it's that you have other roles and responsibilities. So it's our job to go far and wide and condense this into a relevant roadmap for school settings. We reached out to many of these organisations directly. In fact, ISI shared their school standards, which are principle-based and outcomes-based. So what they're really telling you is not how to get there, but where they expect you to get to. And what we're trying to do is adapt this and give you a roadmap of how to get to those outcomes that they're demanding of you. So that's just a very simplistic way of explaining some of the ways in which we're kind of, I guess, tailoring it to a school setting. But the general consensus, regardless of whoever we spoke to, regardless of what organisation or industry, was we need to start earlier. In fact, we spoke to a lot of DEI leads that were in the corporate world, or in the commercial world. And they spoke a lot about what have you been doing, what has worked, what hasn't. And we tried to understand which bits could be adapted that would work in a school setting, because they've done this already. We don't need to do everything from the start. Actually, we can learn from what others have been doing. And at the end of all of these meetings, they always said, but by the time they get to us, it's almost too late. We need the universities to do this work. So we went to the universities, to the SOASs and the Cambridges and the Oxfords and whoever else. We spoke to their DEI leads, we spoke to their inclusion experts, and we said, what's been working, what hasn't? What do you think would work in a school setting? And again, adapted that. And then each of them said to us, well, by the time they get to us, it's kind of too late. We need schools to do this work. So again, I think what everyone's just trying to say is we've got to start earlier. And just as an aside, we had a session with a boys' school in London not so long ago before we broke up the summer. And it was filled with their sixth form boys. And one of the boys was an Asian boy. He said to me, but to be honest, by the time we get there, it's too late. We need the pre-prep to start doing this work. So I think, again, we just need to start early. That's as simple as that. But as you can see from the headlines, ultimately what we're seeing is a shift in expectations, a major shift in expectations, and it will only get more urgent and more prevalent. We have tried, as Inclusion Labs, to develop a program that speaks to the long-term impact and expectations that you will encounter today and for the foreseeable. And when we first started speaking to schools, the response was, we only want to focus on race. We only want to focus on race. And we kept emphasizing that whilst we understood the reasoning behind that, it contradicts the very nature of what it means to be an inclusive school. And I can say that as a black woman standing in front of you. You cannot just focus on race. If you mean every child to thrive, then it can't be to the exclusion of other children. Yes, we have to respond to what's happening. Black Lives Matter made it a sense of urgency, but not to the detriment of other children. And as we all know, you can also have black, gay, disabled children. So there's intersectionality in this work. If we truly, when we had heard from focus groups about what had been happening on the ground from a lot of these students, so actually when everyone's invited reared its head, we weren't too surprised. We'd had little signs and signals and things people had been saying in our focus groups. And since then, a lot of the schools that initially had that only focus on race standards have kind of come back to us and said, okay, look, we get it. There's always going to be something. And what we're trying to get you to do is not focus on race and sweep through your school, and then come back, and focus on LGBTQ+, and sweep through the school, and then come back, and on. But actually, what we want to do is get you to break apart your school, focus on the individuals and parts of that system, and focus on it with an intersectional lens. So for us, the impact areas in our framework are really the touch point by which students experience the school. Let's say assemblies, guest speakers, open days, admissions process, whatever that is. And we want you to take each of these impact areas individually, focus on them across the protected characteristics, the socioeconomic backgrounds, execute the hell out of them. You build confidence, you build trust, and then take that system and that structure, shine it in another impact area, and replicate. That is the way to have a strategic approach to this work. And simply, it just makes sense. One thing I would like to say as I move on to the next slide is, we've recently been noticing, thinking about this idea of a shift in expectations, we've been noticing a lot of emails recently coming into the Inclusion Labs inbox from parents. A lot of them are saying, are you able to share with us which schools you're working with? Because we're trying to make decisions on schools for our children or my child, and we want to know who's taking this work seriously. So again, we believe that it's only going to increase. We're seeing it already in the last few months and in the past year. This shift of expectations is real. It's going to be a major deciding factor for people when it comes to whether to pick St. Peter's versus whoever else. So where does that leave schools? I just shared with you just some of the extracts that we've had from some of our focus groups. You know, and as you can see, it says, I'm getting old and finding it easier to look at that screen. Sometimes some of the simple things are actually the really big problems. That is the number one response we get, regardless if we're talking to students, educators, or parents. It's the little things that have the biggest negative impact sometimes. We feel we're not a priority because we're a small part of the small population. Schools need to approach this with a desire to be different, a desire for change, as opposed to we'll just do it. But even parents are saying, it's also for me. I, as a parent, need educating. So again, you're best placed to do this work, to influence not just your students, not just your colleagues, but also your wider community. But yeah, so these are some of the things they've been sharing with us. And we've really tried to really embed that into this roadmap that we're going to work with you through as you journey on with us. But ultimately, it is no longer okay to just be non-discriminatory. You've got to be actively inclusive. That is where the expectations lie now, and that is where the expectations begin to carry on for the foreseeable. And I know that in some ways it couldn't have come at a worse time. We've all been in this global pandemic, I don't know if you've heard. And actually, you've probably taken the brunt of that. You know, I don't think there was ever a bigger wake-up call than having to homeschool our children. Thank you, by the way. But the one thing I will say is that that shouldn't be to the detriment of doing this work. Because ultimately, the language of this crisis that we've all experienced is also the language of TBI work. It's about unity, empathy, respect, trust, cooperation, communication. And so this should really be seen as an opportunity to also embed inclusion into your processes whilst they are currently being scrutinized and adjusted as a result of the pandemic. This is really a great opportunity to do it alongside with that work. But why you? Why me? Again, you just want to come in, you want to do your job, and you want to go home. And I get that. But you are really best placed. Again, the hours that are spent at school, you spend more time with our children than we do. In many cases, you have more influence over our children than we do. If our children hear it, feel it, and see it from you, passionately, authentically, irrevocably, and this is done daily, it will manifest in them. And what we're asking you as educators to do for our children is what we try to do at home. Teach them, support them, encourage them, protect them. All the ways that we love them. In essence, we're asking you to love our children, to embrace our children, and to truly see who each one is, above and beneath their surface. And this is a quote. I'm ready for one. This is a quote from the late, great James Baldwin. And he says, "Educators must be leaders and advocates and support our students as they examine their society. Schools should be a home for this examination and a place for students and educators to become more culturally competent." Again, students and educators. You have to remove some of the hierarchies when you're doing this work. Because quite simply, my 7-year-old, by virtue of being a black girl, is going to know more about certain issues or certain experiences than you might, regardless of what her age is. And that's just the reality. This is about a joint journey and taking this journey together and being able to say, I haven't got a clue. And that's also okay. The thing that frustrated me the most about the Black Lives Matter movement was there was this idea that as a black person, I knew all of these issues and I had solutions to all of them. And even more so, I agreed with all of them. We're not a homogenous group. I have issues with the Black Lives Matter movement as a black woman, and that's okay. There were many things that I discovered and I was shocked by, and that's also okay. And it's the same for you. Wherever you are in that journey, wherever you are when it comes to that knowledge, it's okay. It's just about momentum. It's about moving forwards. It's about not staying still, not staying put. So ultimately, what we're going to ask you to do is just find that connection point and demonstrate it to your students. And you've got a connection point. We've all been excluded at some point. It might be that you were the only woman in a board meeting, or you were the only dad at a nursery gate. My husband says that's petrifying. Whatever that connection point is, find it and use that to help you help them. You play a crucial role in giving voice to all groups to ensure that barriers are addressed and challenged. Furthermore, all young people deserve to see people like them in leadership positions. At the very least, people in leadership positions that empathize with them and want to support them. You have to emphasize their value and protection, as well as raise their aspirations. So what does that mean in terms of working with Inclusion Labs? Well, we've created a program that we believe answers to a lot of this. A program that builds the infrastructure and certifies that a school is embedding TBI across their system. Again, practices, processes, policies. at every student touch point. And as I mentioned before, the student touch point for us, assemblies, guest speakers, curriculum, the library. We want to have a program that ensures every member of the school's community can rally around it. Collective responsibility, collective action. This is a program that says something about the whole school, that it is inclusive for every young person, that you have made a long-term commitment to be accountable to all your students, and that you are measuring, managing, and improving both the negative and positive impact of this work. So again, just to recap, we will lay the foundations across every area upon which the wider school community can collectively build. We focus on the student cohort, but that's closely connected to the experience of the faculty and staff. They go hand in hand. We're inclusive of all identities, all protected characteristics, and all backgrounds. We provide a combination of custom tools based on best practice and research, adjusted through feedback. And we offer what we hope is a comprehensive and tangible program that will help you work towards progressive, yet long-lasting change within your school and across society. Again, connecting those dots. So these are some of the people that are part of our team that you will encounter as you go through this journey. This is definitely not all of us, but I wanted to kind of highlight a few of them just to show you the breadth of the people and the skills that they've brought to the table. I guess the person you probably will see the most is Steph. She's the former head of PSHE, both within the independent sector and across international schools. She's phenomenal. She is a graduate of sociology and anthropology, and she has a passion for this work. She's also white. Yes. We don't all have to be black, or we all have to be gay, or we all have to be, you know, she can be just as passionate and need to do this work. Then there's Untitled, during the audit phase, which we'll touch on in a second. She is our data and research analyst. She's done this work, taking complex data sets and transforming them into actionable points. She's done this with the police force, so both private and public sector, and she's going to be doing it in schools such as yours. Kevin, he's a lead evaluator, so there's an evaluation program around our school, which I also want to touch on in a second. Around our program, sorry, which I also want to touch on in a second. But him and his team have done evaluations for the Race Equality Charter at FEMIS1 and loads of national agendas. So again, bringing that expertise into that team. And again, all across. We also are partnering with a lot of organizations, the Paul Hamlin Foundation, the Center for Efficiency, the Center for Education and Youth. So again, it's not just about providing a service to your schools. Of course, there's an element of that, but it's about what we're doing with your schools. Can this speak wider? Can this actually provide progressive impact across the UK, across all schools? And we've all come together to try and build that solution. And you're a big part of that. You're a big part of the change that we are expecting and hoping to see across the sector and across the country. This is our 6 key tenets matrix. It's really one of the first things that we developed while we were developing the program. And it's really the principles by which we operate and all of our belief systems. So this is something that we will share with your school, but it just gives you an idea of how we think everything is interconnected. You have those core principles across the top, and they interconnect across that matrix with every facet of your school, from the pupils through to society and local community. If there's one thing that I will leave with you, it is just that at the heart of doing this work is that at any given moment, there might be one pupil that needs this work to be done, whether it's for support, for correction, or for education. That is the heart of doing this work. It's not about what the majority believe, it's that in your care, there might just be even just one pupil that needs you to do this work. We work towards these 4 outcomes. So labs, inclusion labs, it's about testing, trialing, but it's also about our 4 outcomes. It's about learning, again, going back to what I said about our mission, educational development, what they're learning, how they're learning, who they're learning from. It's about accessibility, personal development, Every student should have instant access to an inclusive community. It's about balance, equity, and it's about society, their cultural development. Again, everything that we do with you works towards that, whatever your role is. It's about, are we answering to these things? Are we including these things? And our roadmap tries to do that. So ultimately, what we provide to schools such as yours is a systematic approach to embedding diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is giving you the structure by which to go through this, the steps when you need it, not all in one. It's about releasing bits at certain stages, working through those stages, and then moving to the next. Again, putting a system to this work, not just trying to do bits and pieces here, there, and everywhere, but actually organising that roadmap. So simply, what we ask schools to do who join our programme is, again, really just a simplified version of the 6 key tenets. 360-degree system-wide approach, intersectional, collective responsibility, collective action, student-centred. That is the core of what we do with schools such as yours. So over the next year, you will really experience 3 distinct phases with us. The first phase is phase 1, onboarding and audit. And this will take us, for your school, you've done a little bit of work already behind the scenes, and it really will kick into gear this term, and it will take us up to your break for the Christmas holidays, or the winter holidays. Every school says it differently. In the onboarding, what we're trying to get is that inclusion working group. For us, we want to see as many of you as possible involved in this. Again, not just because you're from an underrepresented group. We're about mirrors and windows. Everyone has a part to play, and it's really important to get that dynamic. So that inclusion working group, that also includes your students as well. And we want to see it across every level, so there has to be at least one government represented. So those are the things that we're kind of putting into together. Every school on our programme writes a letter of commitment. This is signed off by any variation of head, governor, DEI lead, or the senior leadership team, whatever else. And that's just to say to your wider school community, we're about to go on this journey, we're committing to this journey, we believe in the principles of this journey, and also a way to address maybe any issues that have been raised by students or families or whoever else in the school community. Every school is doing it slightly differently. For example, some of the schools are releasing their letter of commitment, which has been created over the last few months, to their staff during the INSET. Then it gets released to the students and faculty that become and parents when term time starts, and then they will finally be publicising it on their website. Other schools are just publicising it on their website straight away, and then make an announcement about doing the first assembly and the parents' evening. Again, it's up to you. It's what works best for your school. So there are a number of things that we're going to be walking the school through. But really, the onboarding is about setting that strategic structure in place, getting that, strategic structure in place to start this journey. Then the first thing we're going to go through is the audit. Now, our audit is quite comprehensive, and I'm going to touch on that. And that will take us up to Christmas. And then we really want to get 2 terms where we leave you as a school community to work through those standards, to work through those benchmarks, to really see how you're progressing and measure that impact. We've designed a lot of things to help you. So a lot of times educators say to us, but how do we know how we're doing? How do you measure our progress? So there are things that we've embedded in our impact assessment framework. Every impact area has an allocation of points. So at the beginning, you might go into assemblies and you might say there is a possible 100 points to accrue. If you go through the benchmarks and standards, you look at it and you go, right now, at this very moment, we are on 20. As you work through it, by the end of the term or the end of the year, you might be on 60. Again, it's giving you visual cues to understand how you're progressing, to measure that impact. There are things like that that we've embedded in. So those 2 phases, phase 2 and phase 3, will take you from after Christmas or your Easter event, spring term, through to your break up in the summer. And then at the end of the July term, all schools in your board will be creating an impact report. Again, similar to the letter of commitment that you'll share with the school community. And with this, again, like with the letter of commitment, also we encourage you That's not mandatory, but we encourage you to share it publicly. Prospective families want to see that you're doing this well. They want to see what you've done. They don't care if you stumble. They want to see that you've been trying to progress and you've been building momentum. So these are also key things that came out of the focus groups that we've created a roadmap and structured a program around. So the first thing that you will all encounter is the audit. This audit has been designed, there have been so many iterations, and we've gone back to educators and back to focus groups, and they've changed this and they've changed that. But we're really asking crucial questions that ultimately we want to get an idea of what it is to be in the school community at this very moment. We ask some very personal information in terms of demographics, in terms of identity, but we also are trying to protect you. We want you to be open and honest. So, for example, it's fully anonymous and confidential. What I mean by that is even the internal team within Inclusion Labs cannot identify you. You cannot track and trace where these responses are coming from. It's been built into the system to be that way. So even if your school was to ask us, we wouldn't be able to tell them anyway. We also have a reporting minimum group of 10, and what that means is, if let's say you're a black teacher, if there's only one of you, but we feel that the response that they have made is important for your school to hear, we take that individual and we place his response or her response within another group until we get a minimum of 10 at the very least, and then we report it. So again, all of these things are in place to protect your identity, to protect anything that could really trace it back to you. We want you to take part in this. It's really important. It's not about trying to establish, oh, you're racist in this or you're discriminatory in that. Actually, we're less bothered about that information. What we're most interested in our audit and how we designed it is the disparities. So again, our audit has 4 sections, one for parents and caretakers, one for SLT and governors, one for students, and then one for faculty and support. And whilst you're going to have some questions that are unique by virtue of the respondents of that group, you'll also have most of the questions be identical across the 4 groups. And we really want to understand the disparities. It's more important to us that if faculty and support believe that, I don't know, a process is down here, that SLT and governors believe it's up there. That for us is what we're interested in. That for us is where we believe the issues lie. So again, we encourage you to be part of that. It's not mandatory, you can't be, but I would really love as many of you as possible, if not all of you, to be part of this. This is the journey you're going to go through, whether you ask that audit or not. So having a say, it's really important. And then just touching up the impact assessment framework, as I mentioned, we dissect the key facets of the school, and then we provide an in-depth blueprint of positive impact areas, and we encourage honest self-reflection. And then the combined data from the audit, as well as any key objectives you might have as a school, really is the starting point. So whatever that audit says that we present back to you is the starting point. That's what we use to say, to recommend the areas we think you need to focus on over the next year. And we only recommend 3 impact areas out of a possible 30. And then, yeah, it lays out that roadmap for actionable steps. So, one thing that we do encourage all schools to do is, when it comes to DEI, only commit 10%. The reason why we say that is because you have other roles and responsibilities. This isn't about putting 100% into that. And if that is the expectation, then you're setting yourselves up to fail. 10% is enough. There's an Indian guru by the name of Sadhguru, and he said, use any opportunity to become 10% better, kinder, smarter, fitter, in every part of your life. Imagine the compounded impact that would have on the world if we took that 10% pledge. And for us, it was a really important quote, and we thought, that's exactly it. That's what schools need to do. Don't try to do everything at once. Focus on that 10%. So like I said, there's about a possible 30 different impact areas. We only recommend 3 for you to focus on over the school year. Execute the hell out of it, build trust, build confidence, and then move on to the next. You only really need to commit 10% of the time. Success isn't overnight, it's when you get a little bit better every day, and it all adds up. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is this vision of every school competing to be the most inclusive, not just the ones with the best grades. These are some of the graphics from our audit and evaluation presentation, which you will see obviously at that stage. But to do that, we need to understand, well, what is an inclusive school? Every school's idea of inclusivity is different. For us, as inclusion labs, and hopefully for the schools in our program, it is a commitment to creating a learning, working, and social environment that is nurturing, accessible, and balanced through its structures, its practices, and its attitudes. And that last bit is underlined because this is an active description of an active, my previous one, response to what it is to an inclusive school. It's not just about thinking that you're an inclusive school or believing you're an inclusive school. It's actually proving it through your structures, through your practices, through your attitudes. Definition, that's the best. This is an actionable definition. But again, a lot of the times, it's the little things. Be accountable, make space to listen. That is an inclusive school. And what does all of this have to do with cursive writing? Actually, it turns out that it has everything to do with cursive writing. At the start, your journey doing this work is going to be messy. It's going to be all over the line, filled with mistakes, and most likely barely recognizable to anyone else. But with daily practice, not all day, 10% remember, setting aside specific times to work on it, it will slowly but surely be legible, beautiful in its presentation, and in other people's understanding. Eventually, you will use it throughout your day when approaching different topics, and it will become second knowledge and habitual. It has everything to do with cursive writing. This is not a moment, this is a movement. You have a big part to play. You and all the other schools in your cohort are going to establish whether these benchmarks and standards are the benchmarks and standards that we should be expecting for every school anywhere. This is an important role that you play being part of this Inclusion Labs team. And it's fortified with the most impressive team, both internally within Inclusion Labs as well as the other organizations that are working with us to support you. If there are areas that you need more resources, we have the capability to create that. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is communicate to us where you need the help and we're here to support you. We don't want to overwhelm you. We don't want you to feel that this is not for you. We want to support you. We want to hopefully get you excited to do this work and to understand that this is different. Again, things like our Decade of Diversity initiative for your school librarian, wherever you are. Join us, join all the other schools. We're working towards some of these achievements as part of the Decade of Diversity. These are things that you want to see, the big changes you want to see insistent in the education sector. We have so many organizations and schools that are going through this process with us, and we encourage you to join us. Again, it's not just about you as a school, but what are the things within the systems that we need to see change over the coming years? And these two are the big ones for us. Ultimately, what we want you and everyone to do when doing this work is to turn intent into action. I wish you all the best school year, the best Christmas term. Be kind to our kids. They mean well. And I look forward to working with you all as we journey this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Just a few thoughts that come to my mind. The first one is that I suspect all of us would have felt some strands coming through from the INSET that we had yesterday morning. There's a tremendous number of strands we mentioned yesterday, which will start perhaps from me to going through BLM, coming through into everyone's invited. Actually, all around this whole thing about diversity, equality, and inclusion and what that means for all of us. We know that it matters. We know that it's probably one of the most pressing issues of our time. I think we can talk about many things which are pressing issues in our time. But this notion of what is a diverse and equal and inclusive society and community, what does it actually mean? We do know that it is one of the most important things that we need to focus on. At the same time, we also probably know that we don't really know what that means, and I think that was some of the strength that Tony was picking up on there. We may not actually understand it ourselves. And it reminds me a little bit of that phase of going from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence and so forth, and then emerging at the other end as unconscious competence. That notion of, I didn't even know this thing existed. Well, now I know this thing exists, and I don't really fully understand it. I need to go through this process, and I need to understand it. I've always felt that a structure in a school, structure in any organisation, is not the ethos in itself, and yet at the same time, an ethos does not exist without structures underneath it. And I think that what we've been doing this afternoon is about the need to go through a process of actually getting to grips with some information, with some data, and then seeing and understanding what does that actually look like in terms of structures and the practices for us going forwards. So it is, as was mentioned at the end there, the start of a journey, but I think actually a really fascinating journey, an exciting journey, and actually an incredibly important journey. So thank you very much indeed for spending your time with us this afternoon. We do look forward to working with you and with your colleagues as well. I just say it's my pleasant duty now to bring some INSET gradually towards a conclusion. What I hope has been a really good couple of days. The first word I uttered at the start of yesterday was simply wow, and that was because of the experience of coming back in and hearing the sort of hubbub and the chatter as we all got back in together. And for the first time since September 2019, being able to see the entire sort of staff community gathered in one place. I've kept on feeling that over the last couple of days actually, when I've been dotting around various different places and hearing conversations and getting a sense of atmosphere. I suspect that Monday is going to be really exhausting. I think it's going to be potentially a little emotionally exhausting, but it certainly might be physically exhausting for us, but I do think it's going to be really, really exciting as well. And I suspect that the boys and the girls, there will be some who are going to be anxious, but I suspect that overwhelmingly it's going to be very much as we felt as a collective group of people, that actually it's just fantastic to be back. It's really exciting and really wonderful to be back. And some of us have been coming back for a long, long time. It's a wonderful time to actually just pause and reflect on some colleagues who have given the most phenomenal length of service to school. And it's one of our habits and practices here to recognise those who attain the astonishing achievement of being at St Peter's for 25 years. And so this afternoon we actually have 4 colleagues to bring them to. So if you think 25 years is a lot added together, we've got a collective 100 years of engagement at Peter's to really celebrate. 2 of them sadly can't be here today, and that's Tara Johnson, who unfortunately can't be with us, but Phil tells me that she's apparently going to be watching this later on. So Tara, many congratulations, absolutely fantastic. A big round of applause for Tara. And Phil's going to find time when we can pop down and celebrate with you down at 2 down at Clifton. But from all of us right now, congratulations and thank you very much indeed. The other really dearly valued colleague who also can't be with us today because she's not on duty at the moment, and that's Yvonne Coulson, who works in the catering department. And a while ago, there used to be, as you go into the dining room up here, the unsung heroes, these photographs of people on the support staff who work behind the scenes, and without them, the entire place would fall over. I began yesterday by thanking the support staff and others who've been working tirelessly throughout the holidays to make sure that everything's ready for us when we come back, or when the children come back rather. And the catering department really is a fantastic example of that. So Yvonne can't be with us. I'm not sure if it's going to be seen tonight, but I'm going to do a slightly cheesy turning towards the camera moment again. But Yvonne, from all of us here in the room, massive congratulations, huge thank you for everything that you have done over all that period of time, and a great round of applause from all of us. I think this is the impact of 18 months of having to record videos for various things. So looking along, well, it wasn't brilliant, I'm not saying it was brilliant, but I thoroughly enjoyed doing one at the end of one term, where I actually got to present some prizes whilst doing that into the camera. So it's a slight recollection of hopefully never having to do that again after next Friday's assembly. 2 people are in the room, and this is right. To do it alphabetically, it does just put Nathan just slightly to come down first. So Nathan has been obviously 25 years, a real stalwart, a real sort of sense of locus around the school, has done so much, and actually was part of Clifton before it became part of the wider St. Peter's family as well. But Nathan has done the most astonishing a number of different things, all of the trips, all the tours, all the success of sport, but also so many other things on the pastoral side as well. So Nathan, if I could just ask you please, if you don't mind, to come down to the front and get a round of applause. If it helps, I said, do you want to say anything? He said, no. Don't let that put you off. Helen Spencer, likewise, is 25. It's actually more than that, because I think it's actually since September 1994. So I'm reckoning that somehow I'm going to play into the only piece of information you get given. So I'm so sorry that this has perhaps slipped off the radar. It's more than 25 years. But it is a wonderful achievement, and your presence in the school is so valued, and I know the children love the cat as well when it comes in. It makes a tremendous difference to the learning that takes place. And bizarrely, so Dave and I had lunch together today, and really it should probably been Helen and David, and we were chatting about when we first met our future partners and so forth. I had a lovely anecdote, which I'm sure you won't mind me saying. Yeah, why didn't you give that? Fantastic weekend. It was just a rather lovely story about actually meeting and falling in love in a play on stage. It's a good story, isn't it? Before actually sort of getting together romantically. So a love match for the school, a love match together as well. What a wonderful couple that you both make with your lovely children too. But anyway, massive congratulations. Thank you so much for everything you do. And as I say, please do come on down and definitely. And also declined the invitation, so there we go. Thank you so much for the last couple of days, everybody. I suspect that it's a heck of a brain, isn't it, going from quite a nice long summer holidays to then having to sit and to think, and your brains are whirring away and all those million and one things. So in a way, perhaps it's quite nice to sort of come into a conclusion a little earlier than perhaps we had scheduled to do so. I hope that gives you a bit of breathing space now. Anytime from about 20 minutes onwards, there's going to be sort of refreshments and celebrations going on outside of Pascal. Do stay on, even if it's just if you've just got a few minutes to come over there, grab some food, grab a glass or something, and just spend some sort of relaxed time in each other's company, and just enjoy that sort of hopefully nice feeling. Yes, tiredness, but also the nice feeling of a really exciting sort of few weeks and months coming ahead. And so finally for me, just massive best wishes to you all for what I'm sure is going to be, yes, it's going to be tiring, but also very, very exciting indeed. Every good luck, every best wishes for the coming term. Thank you very much.